Hi everybody, this is City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me today on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the October My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. And this kit features the beautiful Prima collection called Hello Pink Autumn. This month I'm using one of the cut files that you have access to if you're a subscriber to one of the My Creative Scrapbook kits. This cut file is made by Pear Tree Cut Files, and it says pumpkin spice and all things nice. And I had already cut it out, as you saw, and I backed it with some of the papers from the collection. Now I want to create a mixed media background. Some of the letters are white, and I wanted them to pop. I didn't want them to just blend into the background. So I want to create kind of a dark background. I started off using Lindy's Magical, and that was a magical that I got free in an order that I recently placed. And I thought how lucky that was that I got a color that matched so well with this collection. I also use quite a few Tattered Angels Glimmer Mists. I use Purple Rain, I use Summer Sparkle, Spooky Night, Strawberry Pie, Old World Brown, Grape Soda, and Hummingbird. So I use a lot of different colors. There is some lavender and a very small amount of purple, of real true purple in this collection. And I really wanted to highlight those colors. I like the way they're nice and dark, and I also like the way the purple and the pink and the lavender all look together. Here I'm layering a lot of different colors, and I'm using the packaging technique and just smushing it down. This is where I add some of the Old World Brown. I'm just kind of using this to dull the color down a little bit. I kind of like the addition of Old World Brown because it makes the colors look less summery and more like fall. And a whole lot of this is going to get covered up, but you can see traces of it through the cut file and on the top and bottom of the cut file, so I think that it's worth it. And I wasn't really sure how I was feeling about the background until I sprinkled some water on top and then rolled a paper towel across the area of color, and it lifted up some of the color and it left a whole bunch of white spots, and that's when I really started to like this background. That step really kind of brought the background colors together in my eyes. This background takes me a long time because I want to add a whole lot of layers of color to it. I'm going in now with some more of that magical powder in pink, the one that I added first to the layout. And I'm adding that in a couple of areas. The pink looks very bright right now, but as it dries and as it mixes with some of the other colors, it looks a little bit lighter and less intense. And if you work with watercolors, you may know that as they dry, they get lighter and less intense. So if you want deep, rich color, you do have to add several layers. Right now I'm adding some Strawberry Pie, and that's a cranberry colored spray. And it mixes really well with the purples to make all different shades of purple. I added a lot more color to the background, so in order to have the whole background look cohesive, I want to add some more water splatters, and that way the whole background will have water splatters on it. So once again, I splatter some water on top, and then I roll the paper towel roll on top of the background to lift up some of the color. I didn't mention that the paper that I'm using is a smooth white heavyweight cardstock. It's a 120-pound cardstock, and I've already coated it with some white gesso. If the paper wasn't coated with the white gesso, then spreading water droplets on it and rolling a paper towel wouldn't have the same impact as it does when there's gesso on top of it. So if you like that technique, gessoing the background is very important. And each time that I add more color, I repeat the same process where I splatter water on top, and then I use the paper towel to lift up some of the color. And it is important to make sure that your background is dry before you go ahead and put water splatters on top. Otherwise, it'll just lift up whole areas of color instead of little droplets. I use a heat gun, and it does tend to warp the page a little bit, but then I just run it through my Mink, and the Mink is a laminator. Any laminator will work, and it flattens it out. Sometimes I run it through twice, and I just make sure that everything is dry, I run it through and then it flattens it out again. I use some water and paper towel, and now I'm using some gesso, and that's just to help clean up the background a little bit. I got some color in some spots that I didn't necessarily want a lot of color, and the gesso helps to fade out those unwanted spots in the background. And the more coats of gesso you put on, the more the color will fade away. Even though there's lots and lots of color on the background, I want to add some splatters as well. And the splatters go not only on the big area of color, but around the border as well. And I like the way some splatters on the edge kind of transition the big area of color into the background. So I always try to make sure that I have some splatters along the edge. And I use both purple and the Old World brown for splatters. And now I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that pink and add some splatters of pink too. And with this very small brush, I get some very small splatters. If you want bigger splatters, you can use a bigger brush, and you can even drip some paint on your background, but I just wanted some very small splatters for this layout. That background took quite a while. Thank you for sticking with me. I'm going to put some black strips of paper on this scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to be attaching the mixed media background to this piece of paper. So I just need a border or a frame around the edge. And so I have 2 strips that I didn't cut and glued down on the top and the bottom, and then 2 strips that have corners that were cut at 45-degree angles and then attached down, and that makes the outside look like a frame. And then I'm going to do the same thing with another piece of scrap paper. I'm going to cut it a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to use some of the pink pattern paper from the kit and do the exact same thing. Another alternative to this is to gut some pattern paper, but to me, I feel like this conserves the pattern paper a little bit more because you just need strips of paper, and then the rest of the paper you have left is still 12 inches long, and a lot of times I need to have paper that's 12 inches long, and if you gut paper, you just have a smaller piece of paper on the inside. It's just a personal preference, but I do find that this works pretty well, and like I said, it saves a lot of that beautiful pattern paper to use on other layouts. So I did the same thing here. I cut both of those angles on both sides of those 2 strips on 45-degree angles, and I did that by folding down the corners and then cutting along the fold line that makes. Now I have those 2 different colors attached down, and I'm going to attach down my mixed media background. I've already cut it to size, and I put a lot of ATG adhesive on there so that the mixed media background will sit flat on the other papers. I'm going to be using 2 photos of my daughter when we went apple picking, and I thought I was done with the background, but I forgot that I added some white splatters, and I really like the way the white splatters look. Just like the water droplets, the white splatters just kind of unify the whole background. I rotate the layout as I add the splatters, and then once I've added quite a few white splatters, I decided I would add a few black splatters. I usually add white and black splatters to mixed media backgrounds no matter what, but when there is black in the pattern paper, and there's quite a bit of black in the pattern paper, I wanted to make sure that I had some black splatters. There really aren't too many visible on the final layout, but there are a few. And if I ever want to add splatters to a finished layout, I usually just dot them in there in a couple of key places. Now I'm adding an offset black background to the cut file. I decided that my best chance for creating contrast between the background and the cut file would be to have a very thin black border around the outside of the cut file. So I'm adding some glue to the back of the cut file, and I'm gluing it down to the black paper. And in order to create this cutout, I use the offset function on my Silhouette Cameo. Somehow I got a little spot of color on the cut file, so I'm using some Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, and that really helps to cover up mistakes. Now I want to pop up the entire cut file using some foam. I'm using black foam because there are some places where the cut file is very thin, for example where it says and all things. I have to cut some very thin strips, and just in case I don't cut perfectly, the black will match in better than if I used a different color. Once the whole cut file has been backed with foam, I use ATG adhesive and I attach that cut file down to the mixed media background. I was very gentle when I put the adhesive on those script letters because I wanted to be very careful that I didn't rip them. I mounted both of my photos on first some white and then some black cardstock. I add a little bit more adhesive to the letters so that they will stay attached to the photo. And I move that photo up a little bit. I don't want to cover anything up, that's important, but I want the photo to be as close to the cut file and the other embellishments that are going to go on the layout as possible. So finally, the background is done, the cut file is positioned, the pictures are in place, and now I'm starting to embellish the layout. The embellishment all the way at the bottom, that's to the right of the lower photo, that is a chipboard piece. I'm adding some dimensional flowers. I have some die cuts and some fussy cut pieces. The flowers that I'm using on this layout are 49 and market flowers that were included with the kit. I'm using some Distress Oxide in black soot to ink the edges of all of the die cut pieces and the fussy cut pieces that are on the layout. These photos are of my older daughter Danielle on a day that we went apple picking. I don't know if we were there too late that year, but the pumpkin fields were gone and all of the pumpkins were up front on some hay bales. So we didn't really get to pick our own pumpkins, but we did each select a pumpkin from those that were available. And while there were no images of apples in this kit, there were plenty of images of pumpkins, and I included quite a few of them on this layout. Danielle and her boyfriend both carved jack-o'-lanterns out of their pumpkins, and they put them on the front step. And within a really short period of time, chipmunks came along and had quite a snack on their jack-o'-lanterns. I felt really bad. Luckily, though, we had already taken pictures because, of course, I wanted to scrapbook them. So at least we had photos of their pumpkins or their jack-o'-lanterns. And then a coworker told me that this was happening a lot to a lot of people, and it was because there was a shortage of food for the chipmunks. So that made me feel better. We would rather have the chipmunks have some of our jack-o'-lantern than not have enough to eat. Getting back to what I'm doing on the layout, I added some small flowers. I also popped up the butterflies' wings on some foam. I just put some strips of foam on both of their wings, and then I put some adhesive in the center so that I could press down the center and their wings would pop up a little bit. Now I'm adding some die cut leaves that I have embossed using some blue glitter embossing powder. I'm tucking those leaves around the layout. I'm mainly putting them down with the clusters, but I do include some of the leaves in some other spots on the cut file. I leave some of the die cuts whole, and some of the die cuts I cut into smaller pieces. I like the way cutting them into smaller pieces makes them look very different. And then I put them at different angles so that they don't look like they're just the same die cut repeated around the page. I really like the glittery look of these leaves. I think it was just the right thing to dress up the layout. And I like the way the blue goes along with the purple and the black. I had some die cut pieces on my desk and I used them on another layout this month. I feel that they look like a whole branch of buds or maybe berries, but I like to think of them as buds, and I wanted to add some of those to the layout. I didn't need any more white on the layout since the background is white and the cut file is white, so I used Tattered Angels Glimmer Mists and I colored them just a little bit. I just added a little spray to each of them, and I'm cutting them in small pieces and I'm adding those around the layout. They're just another very small touch. I don't add a lot of them, and they don't make a huge impact, but I like that little bit of color, and I also like the addition of another detail. And that was the last touch, and that completes this layout. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got either some ideas that you could use or some inspiration today. In the description box, you'll find a link to the My Creative Scrapbook website, and you could check out this kit and all of the other beautiful kits that are available this month. This is the limited edition kit, but there are quite a few other kits as well. I hope that you have a great day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.